tries to make.
And before Norm begins, if you do have a question, please read it out, and Rob will repeat each and every question just to make sure that everybody in the audience heard it properly.
Right?
Yeah, before we get started, I want to introduce some very special people so you all can put faces to the actual participants. We're fortunate to have 4 veterans of the 333rd and 969th with us tonight. And I'd just like the gentleman I'm going to introduce to stand, Charles Johnson of the 969th Field Artillery Battalion. Curtis Hadley of the 333rd Battery C. Marshall Rainey of the 333rd Field Artillery Battalion, Battery B. I'd also like to introduce Miss Leanna Alphonse, who is the widow of Willie Alphonse, who literally died a week ago Thursday. We're sorry we couldn't be there. And in case you were wondering why the Surgeon General of the United States is here, she is the niece of Willie Alphonse.
Wow.
And finally, I wanted to introduce some very special people. First of all, Elsie Pritchett, who is the daughter of Willie Pritchett, who he saw her as an infant before he went overseas. He is one of the Wereth 11. And we have 25 family members of the Pritchett family from Camden, Alabama, who came to see the film and be with us. And at this point, I don't think George Shilmo to my right needs any introduction.
I guess, is Joe on his way back? Yeah, okay. Since I think we have one more chair here on the wing, I'd like to recognize some people that were involved with the film. I'd like our visual effects supervisor to stand up, Jonathan Gibson from Toronto. His company created images that people don't know how they did it. And film wouldn't be what it is without his work. Also with us, he's really a nice guy, is Lieutenant Colonel Max Hansen. Actor Ken Arnold is here. Also, Tim, our camera assist, is here from London as well. He worked very closely with Jamie. And we've got family here. My wife and daughter are here. And I just hope Joe comes through the door soon. I've got one chair up here. Ken, do you want to join us? You're an actor. You can hand it up. Sure. While we're waiting for Joe, what I want to mention about Ken is his ancestry is German. And when Frederick actually recommended that we use Ken for the part, I thought he looked fantastic. And I said, I just assumed he knew German. He didn't know a word of German. And I said that I wanted the part to be read in German. So why don't you take it from there?
I panicked. Actually, what had happened was after I agreed to do it, 2 days later, I was working on a video for the IRS in Washington, D.C. And they sent me in to get makeup, and the makeup artist was from Germany, and she spoke fluent German. And I told her that I was working on this project, and I asked her if she knew anyone who could help me with my German. And she said, I can do it. So I went and I met with her, and we worked on it, and I worked on it for a good month beforehand, so I could be as close as possible that I could achieve. So.
Fantastic job.
Can I add a little something to this? It's a testimony how good of a friend Ken is to me, because he worked with me on 2 films before. He was a loving dad in Tomorrow's Today, and then he was a Catholic priest in Father McGive Me. And I said, Ken, I think we have a role for you. He says, what is it? You're going to be an SS war criminal. And he did it, so he must really like us.
He's versatile, right? I guess while we're waiting for Joe, I'll introduce Jamie here. Jamie, this is the second film I've worked on with Jamie, and you couldn't imagine a better partner to work with on any film. Jamie, we got to the point of being able to look at each other and he'd go, yeah, right, I know what you need. And it worked out so well. Do you want to speak a little bit about the project, Jamie? And
yeah, I think the hardest part of the project, from a cinematographer's point of view, was the fact that half of all the reconstruction you saw was shot in Belgium, and the other half was shot in Maryland. Now, that sounds okay, except in Belgium we had this beautiful, bright, overcast sky, which was beautiful for us. But then when we went to Maryland, it was blue sky, full sun. And there were some shots that we had to match, and there was one particular shot, it was Ken's shot, where all the soldiers and the jeep that you saw in front of Ken, that Ken was speaking to, all of that was shot in Belgium with the overcast sky. But Ken was shot in Maryland, and we had to match that so that it could all fit in. And it was a pretty scary thing to do. It was a pretty scary thing to do, but good old Jonathan over there, he got us out of trouble. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah. And I think my memory of shooting the Wereth 11 film was when Rob came to me and he said, we've got this shot idea. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but what I'd really like is to see an SS soldier point a gun right down the lens of the camera. And I said, yeah, sure, no sweat, we'll do that. And then I thought, oh no, hang on a minute, that sounds a bit scary. Call me unadventurous, but I'm not sure that's a good idea. Anyway, I went and spoke to the armourer, and he said, no, listen, it's fine. We'll put a big bit of perspex in front of the lens. And don't forget, it's only blanks. It's only blanks, so it's nothing to be worried about. Great. Okay, Rob, we'll do it. So there I was, lying down by a tree, holding the camera. The camera was called Harriet. And this guy, he pointed a gun right at me. Bang! And the shell shot out the gun and landed right there on my shirt. And I was thinking, oh no, it's going to burn. Oh no, it's okay, it's gone cold. Fine. And yeah, that pretty much summed up the whole of the shoot.
yeah, yeah, he was putting himself in very dangerous situations for me, and I really appreciate it.
It wasn't a shoot, it felt like a tour of duty, actually.
Yeah, exactly, it was. Joe's a rod, so.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I guess one of the main motivators for me was growing up with a lot of family members, coaches, my friends' parents, fathers, that fought in that terrible war. And it wasn't that long ago. And the 333rd was such an outstanding outfit. The more research I did, shooting over 100,000 shells, coming across from Europe, one of the ships in their convoy got hit. So before these, heck, they were mostly kids, before they arrived on Europe, they had to witness that. And for those of you who don't know, when a convoy is going across and a ship gets hit, orders are for everybody to keep on going. So, for all I know, they had to sail right past those guys with some guys in the water. So, welcome to the war. And then they landed on the beach, and there was a Army Piper Cub plane flying over, performing observation. And they got orders to get their guns set up ASAP. And they rushed their guns off the ships, set them up, and they fired a round that traveled 3 miles and knocked a German observer out of a church steeple. So you heard tonight they hit a Tiger tank from 9 miles away, and that's really something. But that was one of their first shots. The other thing that happened on their first day, their forward observer went forward, and he never came back. He was killed. So for those of you, and I encourage you people, to research and learn about artillery. I sent away and got the original 155 field manual from World War II. And it's like a Bible. And it's not just loading a shell and firing it. There's really a lot of skill and a lot of math and trigonometry and balancing the gun and different types of ammunition and counter battery fire. These guys really had to know a lot, and they really performed very, very admirably. So that's what really drove me just to really pay homage to them. That it was not only tragic that the 11 men were killed that way and forgotten about, but they really did their jobs and all that was asked of them. And when you're in combat, and I'm sure a lot of veterans here or anywhere else you might meet them will tell you many times, artillery saves the day. It really does. And I remember one German officer was interviewed after the Battle of Bastogne. You saw the 969, which the 333rd was absorbed into, was issued the PUC, which is the highest award a unit can get. They questioned the German officer and said, "What prevented you from taking Bastogne?" And he said the biggest problem they had was every time they went to mount an armored attack, those 155 guns would rain down on them and demoralize his men. So the other thing I tried to do for the younger people today, and I think this is a film for maybe 7th graders right on up, as you watch the film again, you'll see a lot of different layers in there. We wanted to show the MG42, the 88, the railroad gun. That railroad gun was used during the Battle of the Bulge. Those shells landed in St. Vith and in Schomberg. The airplane. All the horrific weaponry. And just show kids what a wonderful thing our soldiers did not that long ago, and to remember them and to say thank you. And I'm just glad we made the film. These guys are very, very talented. I was making phone calls and sending out emails, and I was all over the place. And they just took all this and pooled their talents and went out. Everybody just became absorbed by the project and went out on their own and researched. Spent hours away from their families, weekends away from their families. And they just engulfed it. And everything that I wanted to see, they did it. And it's amazing. So thank you very much for that, guys. Thank you. Nice to see you here, George. Yeah, it's getting late for George, but I'm glad you made it.
I just want to say that, echo Joe's comments, and I told my wife this, that the driving force or the rallying cry for us was to make a film that was worthy of the 11 men. That was always the uppermost in our minds, our thoughts, and everyone, put their heart and souls into this film because they knew it was an important story. They knew not only had it not been told, but it was a truly tragic wrong that had been done to these soldiers. And we wanted to give it our absolute best. And this crew here is the A-team. I mean, really, it's just amazing. So I'm going to open it up to questions here from the audience, if you have any, to any of us. Fire away.
2 questions, please.
Sure.
Number 1 is, why did the War Crimes Commission drop the ball in pursuing this? And number 2, why were the sentences of the convicted reduced?
All right, the question was, why did the War Crimes Commission drop the ball on this, and why were the sentences for the war criminals reduced?
I could answer that, sir. I obtained a copy of that war crime report, and the last paragraph reads, this isn't verbatim, but what Colonel Ellis said was, due to the fact that the war has ended and the German army has been discharged, the likelihood of finding the perpetrators who committed this crime would be very unlikely. This case is hereby closed. Your second question? I'm sorry.
It was
The sentence, okay.
sentences.
Some of you may remember Senator Eugene McCarthy. Okay. McCarthy was very, very outspoken during these war trials. Word got out that many of the Germans were tortured and had mock trials, mock executions, crushed testicles, and what he tried to say was that it was a farce. Here we are trying to demand justice and being, in a system of justice, and we did some terrible things too. And then the Cold War started. And I think that's part of the reason also. I think at the time, politicians, the military thought that it wasn't highly unlikely that we might need the help of the German army to turn and fight against the Russians. That's what I found. What I tried to do and what I tried to be so careful with and what I tried to emphasize with everybody was, we're going by facts. We're not speculating, okay? I don't know who killed those 11 men. I have an idea, but until I know for certain. And one of my goals to come from this film is for perhaps somebody in Germany, maybe somebody that's going to meet their maker soon, might want to speak up and say what happened that day. Because I've heard 4 or 5 different stories. So there's still a lot of mystery there, but we just tried to base it on it. But that's what the report said, sir. And I'm sure everybody has their own opinions. I know I have mine.
Another question. Yes, sir.
I heard you say something about the being a good thing to give to the 7th graders on up. I'm a teacher at a local high school, and I was wondering, is it possible to get a copy of this so we can show it at our Black History Month show that we have next week, actually?
Absolutely, sir. We finalized a deal with Nat Geo, and we had to resolve the matters of distribution. You know what? This is my first film. Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
How do we make DVDs now?
We have a sales representative on the West Coast who's arranging a DVD deal for us, and part of it is the educational market. So there's a.
What's the time frame?
It's probably 3 months, easily. Yeah. but, you know, perhaps on a case-by-case basis before that, we could arrange something, you know, per request, you know. Yes, another question.
I would like to know, being a sister of George, how come it took so long for someone to recognize the 333rd?
I think, Nora, can you speak to that? This is the sister of George, and she wanted to know why did it take so long for the 333rd to be recognized?
That's a great question, and it really comes to the whole issue of black participation in World War II. Long before I found that there was a book by the same name, I referred to the black soldiers of World War II as the invisible soldiers. Most people have heard of the Tuskegee Airmen, but to the other 250,000 black troops who served in Europe and the Pacific, no one has really ever heard of them. They got a little bit of press during the war, but because of the segregation of the time and the prejudice, they simply did not get the same type of attention. There were 9 black artillery battalions like the 333rd. The vast majority of black troops were in a service role because the official Army policy is that they felt that was really all that the black troops were, quote, good for. And the combat troops, such as the 333rd and the others, were really special units. It was almost an experiment. And the important part of their service is because of the performance of units like the 333rd and the 969 is partly what convinced President Truman to desegregate the armed forces, because it laid to rest years and years long thoughts that black males weren't smart enough to handle artillery, even though there were black artillery units in the Civil War, that they could only do sort of stevedore type work. So the unit was very important, but there has been virtually no attention to the black soldiers of World War II, with the exception of the focus on the prejudice that they endured both in the Army and out. And I've told Rob this, but I want to say it in front of everything. The most important part of this film is this is the first film that talks about the service of these men. It has nothing to do with prejudice. These were American soldiers. And Marshall Rainey said something to me a few weeks ago that I've just carried with me. He said when he was in England that the best compliment he had is when the English referred to him as an American soldier, because the black troopers took pride in the fact that they were soldiers, and no matter what anybody else thought, they took pride in it. The 333rd, the 969th were really crack outfits. And just to put things in a little bit of perspective and to whet your appetite, this that you've seen in this movie is really a small piece of the story, because the survivors, the A and B battery and headquarters battery, who were evacuated the day before, they ended up at Bastogne with the 969. They were encircled by the Germans. They were with the 101st Airborne the whole time the siege of Bastogne was going on. That's why they got the Presidential Unit Citation. So there's a lot more history to the black soldiers of World War II that's going on, and it's my hope that more and more people will pay attention, so that it's not that they were forgotten, they were never really acknowledged in the first place. But a film like this is very, very important because it focuses on the service, and that's what we should be focusing on. Not the prejudice they endured. Yes, that was definitely a part of things, and that reflects on our society at the time, but the service that these men did.
And that was, that guiding principle came from Joe and everyone on the team. We wanted to show the heroics of them as soldiers, you know, no matter what color they were. They performed heroically and delayed the Germans. Everything that was in there was factual. And what comes out of it is people realize that, yes, black soldiers fought in World War II, and bravely on the front lines. And it's my hope with this film that it opens up the door. I feel like there's a whole treasure trove of stories that haven't been told from World War II. And I hope this will open up the door to those stories. and not just, about the prejudice. And Norma has another.
I just wanted to, this is the first time I've seen the film, by the way. But what I really wanted to commend Rob for, and to back up what he's saying, if you notice at the end of the film, you saw black soldiers in many different roles. You saw the black Marines on Iwo Jima. You saw black soldiers, not just the Tuskegee Airmen, but in the many different roles that they served in World War II. And that's a great first step to just saying to people they were everywhere. There were Marines on Iwo Jima. There were black soldiers who landed on D-Day. If you've ever seen the pictures, and if you go back and look in the history books of, the dirigible balloons that they put up with the wires so that the low-flying planes would run into it, that was an all-black unit, the 331st, that landed on day one at Omaha Beach and put those balloons up. So they really were everywhere. We just, we from a historical standpoint, really just didn't take note of it.
I hope to be here again next year at about this time doing a follow-up story on another group, the 452nd Anti-Aircraft Battalion. Remarkable group of men. Shot down over 1,000 German planes and didn't sustain one casualty. Now those planes are going 100 to 300 miles per hour. And they had the deuce and a halves with the quad 50 cal sitting back there like that, over 1,000 German planes. Those guys were special. If you want to read a great little book, it's titled Blood for Dignity, and it tells the story of how the 5th Platoon originated during World War II, when black troops were brought up to the front lines. Also, a lot of people don't know, most of the black soldiers that went to the front lines during that battle had to take a cut in rank and a 50% pay cut. Yeah. Very sad. So all we can do is keep looking for these stories, and they're gems, and they're special in their American history. And I'll try to do the best I can to keep honoring these guys. Because what it comes down to, we're all Americans and they were American soldiers, and it's about time this stopped. Thank you.
Another question? Oh, sure.
The question from Regina was my father's relationship to this group. First of all, you all don't have the time for me to tell you how I got involved in all this, but basically my dad was with the 106th Division. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was captured. It was my dad's division that Battery C was asked to stay behind and support. So there's really a tie in there between why they were asked to stay behind and support it. And when my dad and I first, we went back to the Ardennes in 1994 for the 50th anniversary. I did a lot of research to find out where he was, what he did, and we became very, very good friends with the Otta Ricken, who is mentioned, and her husband, and they took us around to some memorials, and one of the memorials they took us to was the Wereth Memorial. Now, the memorial you saw in Rob's film is the modern memorial, which we're really, really proud of. The original memorial that Hermann Langer, who was speaking in the German, put up was basically a simple cross in the corner of a cow pasture surrounded